Hello and welcome to my English task. My name is of course Joachim Arneson, and today we are going to talk about what is an executive order and what is the president allowed to do with it. Now, basically, what an executive order is that the president is allowed to not write new laws or change existing laws, but he's allowed to tell what the federal offices in which he oversees are supposed to do, what are there. And the executive orders fall in under the guidelines that are set by Congress and other presidency of the jurisdiction. And they basically just decide the federal agencies, what is their tasks. And that is what an executive order is. Now, it is important to note that the president executive order does not get, as I've said before, it does not change the existing laws or can make new laws. That's Congress and the Senate's jobs. And it would be really shitty if the president would take it away from them. And basically, much more simply explained, if you have the border control, that is a federal agency that works under the president. And because of that, he writes an executive order on what they're supposed to do. Like, he can increase how many border patrols they have, how much border patrol they have. He cannot change their budget. He cannot take and move money around. Neither can he do any drastic changes. There is a limit to what he can do with the executive orders. And there's a limit. Now, the president himself doesn't actually have that much power. He does have the power to influence some kinds of things, but not that much. He's more of a state figure that can veto and decide what the federal programs that he controls are supposed to do. He's also the one, he does not have anything to do with the lawmaking of the country. That is left with the Congress and the Senate. But he does have the power to veto with them. But the Congress can override that veto and go around the president himself. So the president does not have that much power, and this is because the Americans used to be very afraid of having powers mostly collected in one place. Which is what they didn't want, a king or an emperor, but chose rather to have a president that is more of a stately figure. But this all changed somewhere in history. And the president got a little bit more power, but it's still not enough to change America. The president does not have enough power to do everything he wants to do. He has to have the support of the Congress and the Senate to do so. Now, you've probably heard about the weird executive orders that he's put in place, the whole border thingy and some other probably stupid, but I've decided to focus more on promoting free speech and religious liberty. It is basically an executive order that tells the agencies that they now have to increase their religious liberties. It says, for example, all executive departments and agencies shall, to the greatest extent practicable and to the extent permitted by the law, respect and protect the freedom of persons and organizations to engage in religious and political speech. Basically, what this executive order says is that you are supposed to not have any religious biases, which you would already assume that the United States had this, but it would appear that it was necessary for Donald to put... I just remembered. Now, it would have seemed that it was important for President Trump to put out an executive order that was promoting free speech and liberty inside the federal government, showing that maybe the federal government wasn't as accepting as many were led to believe. There were probably some discrimination and other kinds of biases inside the federal government itself. And what this does is that it tries to remove that. It is not a that old bill. It was passed in November, and it is something that restricts to the federal government itself, which is why it's a little bit difficult to find what kind of outcomes it had. But seeing as there hasn't been much debate about it, there hasn't been any court cases about it, and there hasn't been anything that leads me to believe that it has been denied or is not going into action, I would probably say that this bill is going into action as planned, and therefore we will probably see less, or there will probably be less discrimination inside the federal government and its agencies in the future. And I decided to focus on this because I believe that the rest of the class is probably going to focus on something negative that he did. Or maybe some of the other people that are Trump supporters are going to focus on something positive. But I tried to find a little bit of a middle ground to just show that even though the things he does is stupid or now I chose to focus on this basically because I believe that much of the class is either going to focus on the extreme good or the extreme bad, whilst I'm trying to focus on something that should already have been in place but is now in place. And I believe it's important to at least give him a little bit credit where credit is due. Look how happy he is about that. He's like, oh yeah, credit where credit's due. Hello and welcome to a suburban part of North Korea. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the Trump and North Korean position. Now, we've all seen... it's fucking cold, I'm gonna go inside. Now, we are probably all seen the tweets between President Trump and Kim Jong-un. And there are some things that can be done to the North Korean crisis thingy. And it would appear it is talking to Russia and it is talking to China. Because the two people that are still doing anything with North Korea is Russia and China. All of their economy is based around China and Russia. It has to be. No one else wants to shop with them because everyone is following the UN, the ban. And therefore I think if the United States increases its cooperation with China and Russia and tries to get them to back out of North Korea, then the dynasty will just fall apart. There won't be any food, there won't be any fuel, there won't be any power, there won't be electricity, anything. And they won't get any more uranium so that they can't make any more nukes. And it's probably best to let just North Korea just be North Korea for now, and then cut off their lifelines. It might make them a little bit more extreme in attacking, but we do have defenses against their pretty shitty missiles. And other than that, I don't think there's much to do. There is war, of course. You know, if the North Koreans do bring a nuke to the US and blows it up, we all know that North Korea isn't going to exist anymore. It's just going to be wiped off the map by enough nuclear bombs to blow up the entirety of the earth. So I think North Korea knows that it can't go to war. And I think the United States knows that it can't go to war. And I think that's why they're trying to do much more political battles, trying to just flex their muscles, see who cracks first. Like, who's the last one to do the insult is the last word wins, basically. And that's, if you want to know more, watch South Park Season 21, Episode 2. Yeah. What are you still doing here? The presentation's over.